So we've talked about transitions mostly with regards to summary writing, but transitions get used in all kinds of writing, not just summaries. In this lesson, we will learn about two types of transitions, transitional devices and transitional phrases. Let's just talk about transitions in general. Good transitions can connect paragraphs and turn disconnected writing into a unified whole. So we know that a paragraph is a group of sentences that are all about one thing. A paragraph is unified, has a topic sentence, it's well developed, and it's coherent. That's great if we can write a paragraph, and that's great if we can write a bunch of paragraphs. But we need to show how those paragraphs relate to each other for the writing to be good. So we need to take a bunch of parts and we need to put them together. Here's an example of the end of one paragraph and the beginning of the next. Overall Management Systems International has logged increased sales in every sector, leading to a significant rise in third quarter profits. Next paragraph. The corporation has expanded its international influence. Disconnected. We can add a transitional device to make it a little bit more connected. Overall, Management Systems International has logged increased sales in every sector, leading to a significant rise in third quarter profits. Another thing to note is that the corporation has expanded its international influence. So by saying another thing to note, lets us know this was a thing, and here's another thing. So we're getting there, we're getting closer. We added a transitional device. Um, Transitional devices are useful. It helped out this, and it can help lots of situations in writing. Transitional devices are like bridges between parts of your paper. Here are some transitional devices. If you go Google OWL Purdue transitions, you'll get a whole list, this whole list actually, and there's more. There's more situations besides just wanting to add things together, compare things, prove things, or show exceptions. There's other situations, and there's new transitional devices you can use. These transitional devices can be used in any writing. You can always use these words. They are cues that help the reader to interpret ideas a paper develops. Transitional devices are words or phrases that help carry a thought from one sentence to another, from one idea to another, or from one paragraph to another. So they don't have to just be used between paragraphs, they can be used between sentences. The transitional devices can be used in any writing context for any paper or any other piece of writing. Transitional devices work especially well in summaries. They're kind of just plain transitions that can be used in any context. It doesn't matter. So we can see here another thing to note. Another is basically the transition here. Um, but a transitional phrase is unique to a particular writing context. So it's something that's going to be talking actually about the topic matter that your paragraphs are talking about. Here's an example. Overall, Management Systems International has logged increased sales in every sector, leading to a significant rise in third quarter profits. These impressive profits are largely due to the corporation's expanded international influence. So that was pretty smooth, and we're really connected now. These impressive profits makes the reader remember the significant rise in third quarter profits. These impressive profits. We know that a paragraph is a group of sentences which are all about one idea, but that doesn't mean that paragraphs have nothing to do with one another. That's why we use transitions. So instead of treating paragraphs as separate ideas, transitions can help readers understand how paragraphs work together, how paragraphs reference one another, and how paragraphs build to a larger point. Paragraphs work together. They reference one another. The whole reason is to build to a larger point. That larger point is your thesis statement. Here's another example. Fearing for the loss of Danish lands, Christian IV signed the Treaty of Lubeck, effectively ending the Danish phase of the 30 Years' War. But then something else significant happened. The Swedish intervention began. It says these paragraphs do not work together. I don't know. I'm going to disagree with my own PowerPoint here and say they do kind of work together. Because it says, but then something else happened. It's acknowledging that something happened and then another thing happened. But things happen all the time. So who cares if something else significant happens? So I think they do work together. They just don't do it very well. They work together they put in about the least amount of effort to work together that they possibly could. Here's an improved version. Fearing for the loss of more Danish lands, Christian IV signed the Treaty of Lubeck, effectively ending the Danish phase of the 30 Years' War. Shortly after Danish forces withdrew, the Swedish intervention began. So, the Danish phase of the 30 Years' War ended. Shortly after they withdrew, the Swedish intervention began. So this is a transitional phrase that was written specifically for this purpose in this context. Nope. Okay, where am I? Here I am. Here's another example of paragraphs that don't really reference one another. Amy Tan became a famous author after her novel The Joy Luck Club skyrocketed up the bestseller list. There are other things to note about Tan as well. Amy Tan also participates in the satirical garage band The Rock Bottom Remainders with Stephen King and Dave Barry. I mean, it kind of references it because here's a thing to note about her. She's an author. And here's another thing to note about her. She's in a band, so there are other things to note about Tan as well. Is it does reference that other paragraph, but it just doesn't do it very well. It's like, yeah, other things too, whatever. Here's a better one. Amy Tan became a famous author after her novel The Joy Luck Club rocketed up the bestseller list. Though her fiction is well known, her work with the satirical garage band The Rock Bottom Remainders receives far less publicity. Though her fiction is well known. Boom, transitional phrase that references this paragraph. Also, receives far less publicity. It kind of in a roundabout way references this too. References this and this. So that's a nice transitional phrase in order for the paragraphs to reference each other. When we use smooth transitions, our readers see what our paragraphs have to do with one another and how all of our paragraphs work together to build to a larger point, which is the thesis. That's my dog. So recap, transitions connect our paragraphs together. We can use transitional devices, which are words that can work in any context, or we can use transitional phrases. We invent these ourselves, and they are particular to one writing context. Here's my works cited. If you haven't been to the writing lab and OWL means online writing lab, at Purdue, you should go, and there's a search bar, and you can search for anything writing related, and it's really helpful.